Yo, welcome back everybody to a brand new video here on the second channel, and I thought it'd be important to do my opinions on where I think the Obsidian Flames meta is right now heading into Pittsburgh, and where I think it is in general with what decks I think are good and what decks I think are bad. I obviously just did a couple videos where I looked at online turn results, and I did give some pretty interesting opinions within those videos, and I kind of wanted to clarify and kind of touch upon my opinions on the Obsidian Flames format right now, especially, again, Pittsburgh is just 2 weeks away. So I really thought it'd be important to kind of give my opinions on the meta and all that good stuff, because I think the format's in an interesting spot right now. I think some of the new decks are maybe a little too overhyped right now, especially something like Charizard, which seems to be a bit more of a PTCG Live ladder deck than an actual deck that can win in tournaments. But we'll get to all my opinions, of course, when we get to each and every card. And if you are new to the second channel here, make sure to click the subscribe button down below. So, of course, you help me on the road to reaching 8K subs. It would be greatly appreciated. And, of course, leave a like on the video if you're going to enjoy. And, of course, I will leave a link to this tier list down below if you want to go ahead and do this tier list yourself, of course. But let's get into the tier list. So, starting off, we have Palkia V-Star. I think Palkia is a legit tier 2 deck right now. It did get 9th place at Worlds, and I think it does translate really well heading into the Obsidian Flames format. I think Cyrus's list is pretty solid. Maybe you can cut the Spirit Tomb and then add in a, keep the Articuno, and then add the Canceling Clone back in, because Articuno could be good against Gardevoir and Charizard even if you run into it. So, I think Palkia is an honestly a good deck. I'm surprised people do not play it more. I barely see it on the ladder. Even in online tourneys, it doesn't really pop off. But I think it's just a deck people aren't playing that is just legit good. Again, getting 9th place at Worlds is insane. And I will stand by the fact that I think if Cyrus really did get into top 8, I think she had a decent shot at winning the entire tournament. So I think that Palkia is a deck that people are really underestimating and should really respect, because I think it's a very strong deck. Nobody plays it for whatever reason. Palkia Shampoo, nobody plays it. Of course, you're not playing Excalibur. It's just Palkia itself. So I really think Palkia has potential in the meta, and I think it's fine into this format. I don't think it has any bad matchups. Maybe, I guess, you could argue the Miraidon matchup sketchy, but Palkia could be Miraidon. You kind of just prize trade against that deck. So, yeah, let's take a look at the next deck here, and we got a Lou of Arc decks to look at. First one is Arctura Umbreon. Sadly, I think Arctura Umbreon is on its way out. I think the deck is just falling off a little bit. I mean, yeah, it's okay against Guardy, and I guess Lugia is still out there, and even Lost Box can be decent. But with the resurgence of Kyogre now, and also with Lugia still playing Urshifu, and also Guardy playing Mirage Step Kirlia, which is actually pretty bad for Arctura. Mirage Step is actually a really good counter to Arctura's strategy of use Lost City. So I think that Arctura, again, is just on its way out of the format. I think that it's falling off a little bit. I also think that it has an awkward matchup against Xianpao. I think its Charizard matchup is probably not very good. And I think, obviously, Miraidon getting popular is also kind of bad for the deck. So, sadly, I do think that Arctura is on its way out. And Lost Tina being, really good right now also is what's hurting Arctura. So, yeah, I think Arctura Umbreon, sadly, is just no longer where it is. I'm sad to see it go. It's one of my favorite decks, but sadly, the deck is just not great right now. I just don't think it has enough good matchups to warrant playing it. Because even, the decks you can beat, like Gardevoir and Lugia, they're pretty much just adapting to it. Again, Lugia, there's, Colorless Lugia, which plays Path. Single Strike Lugia probably still plays Urshifu. And Gardevoir, now having access to Mirage Step, can really hard counter the idea of, spamming Umbreon in Lost City against Gardevoir. So, I really think that, Arctura just is not the greatest deck anymore. I guess you can maybe, tweak it, maybe play, Flying Pikachu, or play, Alolan Vulpix, or, play, a Grass Attacker to help against Charizard/Xianpao, but ultimately, it's not going to help you into, the other Arc decks, and also Lost Tina will always just be a bad matchup for this deck. Next up is Arctura Vulpix, the Alex Szymanski deck. Probably same thing, tier 3. I mean, Vulpix isn't a bad attacker right now. It seems to be okay against Charizard and Xianpao and Gardevoir, but I don't think Vulpix is, worth it right now. Xianpao has, Cross-Switcher Boss. Charizard can play, a couple attackers that can hit the Vulpix if they really wanted to. So I don't think that Vulpix is the greatest card. Also, some Charizard lists are just playing, Path to Peak. So I don't know if the Arctura Vulpix is the greatest deck. But it could be okay. I don't think it's, the worst thing ever. Again, I think Dura is still, tier 3. I don't think Arctura is, the worst thing you could ever play. I just don't think that it's, that. It's not worth it anymore, is the way I'm going to put it. Next up is Arc Pikachu. I guess tier 3. I didn't really know what to do with Arc Pika here. I mean, I guess it depends what you pair it with. I think Flying Pikachu is still, decent right now. Again, it's not bad against Xianpao and, other decks, Lugia's okay against, but I don't know. It depends on what you pair it with, I guess. Next up is Arc Drago. Maybe tier 2.5. I mean, it's probably one of the better Arc decks. It is an Arc Judge Path deck, and that does kind of boast it. It's basically Arc Tina with a couple of extra tricks up its sleeve. I don't know. Arc Drago seems to be okay. It's another deck that is kind of like underexplored, and on paper, it might not be a bad deck, to be honest. I wouldn't hate if somebody played this deck and did well with it. I mean, you do have Noivern, Pathlock, which could be pretty good right now against Charizard and Champow and stuff, so I don't hate it. It's also one of the only Arc decks that can maybe stand up to the likes of Lost Tina, so there is that to keep in mind, too. Next up is Arc Goo, another tier 2.5 deck. So Arc Goo actually did get Day 2 at Worlds. A couple people did get Day 2 with an Arc Gudra deck, which was Arc Gudra with Crushing Hammers. So the idea of playing Arc Hammers is starting to resurge a little bit, and I think that Arc Goo is an example of that. I mean, Gudra's probably okay right now in the meta. Even against, like, Charizard, Gudra's probably, like, fine. So I think that Arc Goo's, like, a decent deck. Crushing Hammer, go Burr. And it's another Judge Path deck. Arc Goo does play Path to the Peak and Crushing Hammer, which can be pretty annoying for some decks right now to deal with. So I think that Arc Goo's a solid enough deck. So I think it leans into the more tier 2.5 slot. Next up is the Michael Catron Arc Slacking deck. Probably falling off. I think the Umbreon Slacking Pikachu deck is just not great. It's basically just Arc Dura. Maybe slightly better against Lost Tina, but no, I don't even know if that's even the case. I think that the Michael Catron NAIC deck is starting to fall off a little bit, because I just don't know if it really has the best matchups. And again, now that Charizard is a thing, I don't know if this deck can really stand up to the likes of Charizard. I guess you can add, like, a Grass Attacker into the deck to maybe fix that matchup, but we'll have to see. A lot of these Arc decks, I can't really throw anywhere lower than Tier 3, because I think that somebody could still play them and do well. It really depends on what you're getting matched against overall. And then Arc Tina. So it's actually two different Arc Tina decks, which I guess we'll bundle together. So we got straight Arc Tina. Arc Tina, pretty solid Tier 1.5 deck. Arc Tina Superior, I think it's a Tier 2 deck. So here's the thing. So Arc Tina, without the Superior, even with Pikachu, if you want to go down that route, I think Pikachu's good in the deck too, but Arc Tina, I think it's a Tier 1.5 deck. I think normal Arc Tina is pretty solid. I think it's basically just Arc Tina, right? It's got the solid matchup spread against anything if you just judge pathing them out of the game. The deck's pretty good. You can play the Flying Pikachu. Then we have the Arc Tina Superior deck. The reason why people are playing Superior is because Charizard. Here's the thing, though. Will Charizard even be popular at Pittsburgh? So if you were to roll up to Pittsburgh with Arc Tina Superior, you play 9 rounds. What are the chances you play against more than just, like, 3 Charizard decks? I don't think that's very likely. Maybe, like, early rounds, maybe, but I don't think Arc Tina Superior is worth playing. I think the deck is good if you do play against a lot of Charizard, but the deck otherwise is just, like, the Superior doesn't really do anything. I mean, I guess it's, like, slightly advantageous against Lugia because they have the Tyranitar, and Tyranitar is weak to grass, so you do get, like, a decent way to kind of handle T-Tar, which is, I guess, a good thing, but I don't know if Arc Tina Superior is worth playing over just normal Arc Tina for Pittsburgh. Specifically, online tourneys and ladder, I would say Arc Tina Superior is good because Charizard is very popular there, but at Pittsburgh, we're not too sure Charizard is going to be popular. It's very undecided, and that's why I think Arc Tina Superior is the worst Arc Tina variant. Next up, here we go, folks. Charizard EX. What are my opinions on Charizard? Where would I place Charizard on this tier list? I think that Charizard is a tier 2 deck. I think Charizard is very overhyped and I think it's just very exaggerated right now, especially on the TCG Live ladder. Everybody who plays TCG Live is complaining that, oh, while I play against this Charizard, this deck is OP and broken. Honestly, Charizard is not that good right now. I actually think that Charizard is just kind of a mid deck. I don't know if I can put it any lower than tier 2. I think the deck still has a lot of strength right now in the format, and honestly, the Pidgeot Charizard engine is actually just insane right now. And we're still waiting for an optimal Charizard list to come out, but I really do not think Charizard is that good. I think people are really overhyping the deck right now. The reason why it's so popular on the live ladder is because, 1, it's the new deck, and 2, because you get the deck for free. Everybody's going to play that because it's a free deck, right? I think that Charizard is a legit, just flat-out mid-tier deck. It just basically feels like it feels like you're just playing an Arc deck, like a mid-tier Arc deck. And part of me wants to put it in tier 2.5. I think the deck is legit that lackluster, but I'm going to be generous. I'm going to say Charizard is still a tier 2 deck. I think there will still be a showing of Charizard at Pittsburgh. My problem is Charizard has bad matchups across the board. I think it struggles against Lost Zone decks, especially now that Kyogre is starting to resurge in the format. Kyogre's doing well in League Cups. It's winning online tourneys. Doing really well in league challenges. It's like, check Twitter, and even like Zach Lesage has won like a league cup. It's like Kyogre's starting to be popular again. Charizard loses to Lost Zone deck, especially Kyogre. Charizard doesn't have the best Shampoo matchup, because if Shampoo takes the first 2 prize knockout, you probably just lose the prize trade. Charizard has an abysmal Lost Tina matchup. It has an awkward matchup against any deck that plays Path. I think it also has a bad matchup against Lugia decks. I think the only decks that is like okay against is maybe Gardevoir, and even then, Gardevoir isn't that bad. I think the double reversal energy Guardy list is actually pretty good against Charizard. So I think that Charizard is a flat out mid deck. I honestly want to put it in tier 2.5. That's how bad I think this deck actually is. But I think that I gotta keep it tier 2. The deck is still respectable. It still is a very strong deck when it sets up, and it still is hard to beat. I mean, obviously it has a good Mew matchup. And even the Guardy matchup is probably not that bad. But I just cannot put Charizard any higher than tier 2. I don't think the deck is that good. I think people are really overhyping the deck right now. It's really just because of how popular it is in online tourneys, and the latter is why people are thinking it's that good. But trust me, come Pittsburgh, Charizard is not going to have the greatest showing, and I really think that the deck is just very much not great. I think it just has too many bad matchups right now, and that's what holds it back. It's not a bad deck. I just don't think that it's as good as people are making it out to be. I really do not think this deck is. I don't think Charizard is that good, and that's why I wanted this tier list in the first place. I really wanted to base my opinions on Charizard with kind of giving them in an in-depth look with doing a tier list, and I think that Charizard ain't that good. Will you play against him in Pittsburgh? Honestly, in day one, if you go XO, like if you don't drop around going like 4-5-0, you're probably going to play against one or two Charizards, maybe at most. I think as you kind of progress more into the tourney, you're going to see less Charizard. You're going to see more Lost Tina. You're going to see more Arctina. You're going to see more Gardevoir. You're going to see more Lost Box. Even Mew. And that's why I think Charizard is just honestly a very mid deck. I really think that it's probably a tier 2.5 deck, but I'm going to keep it in tier 2 for now. Next up is Xianpao. I guess we can call it like the Xianpao decks with Palkia, Arceus. Xianpao's probably tier 1.5 right now. I think the deck's pretty solid. I mean, I think the deck is good. It's got Greninja Cross Switcher Cologne. The deck is still great, and I think it has a good Charizard matchup. If you take the first knockout on a 2-prizer with Xianpao, you just beat Charizard, because then you can just go knockout Charizard back-to-back. Pretty easy stuff. So yeah, Xianpao's pretty good. I think that it's a solid deck right now in the format, and I think that it's a tier 1.5 deck. Basically just up there with like Arctina. It's one of those decks that it's respectable. It's not going to beat everything in the room, and it has the ability to brick pretty easily. Though, if it gets rolling and sets up, the deck is pretty dang good. Next up is Darkrai. Probably bad. I mean, I don't know. Darkrai's cool, but, like, I don't know. I don't even know if it has a good Charizard matchup, and I think that its matchup against Xianpao is also pretty abysmal, because a lot of the time, you're going to not KO with Xianpao before they knock your Darkrai out and take 2 prizes, and then you fall behind too much and lose. Dialga is another deck that's probably bad. I mean, yeah, it can beat Xianpao maybe, but I don't think that it's, like, worth playing. Next up is DTE Mew. So DTE Mew is kind of weird. We got Fusion Mew. Fusion Mew I think is still good. I think Fusion Mew is honestly still a tier 1.5 deck. Here's the thing. Spiritomb is no longer relevant. I don't think that many people are playing Spiritomb anymore. Even the Tina decks aren't, like the Lost Tina decks, they're cutting Spiritomb. I think Spiritomb is starting to slip in popularity, and that's probably because of Charizard. I think people are thinking that Charizard is going to scare Mew away, and then Mew's going to suck. And then we're going to all realize Charizard is going to flop. Nobody played Spiritomb because everyone thought Charizard was good, and the next thing you know, Mew's going to come out of nowhere and win a regional again. I think Mew is legit still a good deck. I think that nobody plays Spiritomb right now. I legit think you can go through day one of Pittsburgh and play against maybe like 2 decks of Spiritomb. DT Mew probably is like tier 2. I think Fusion Mew is still the better way to play Mew right now, but DT Mew is still fine. Fusion Mew is also adapting and playing like a Selgor, which maybe helps against Charizard, so I really wanted to give my opinion on where DT Mew and Fusion Mew are. I think Mew is still good. I think that legit Spiritomb is falling off a little bit. Nobody's really playing Spiritomb anymore, and I think that's a good thing for Mew. Because everyone thinks Charizard is going to be the next best deck, and then when people realize that Charizard is just kind of a mid-deck, Mew's, people are going to cut the tomb, and then Mew's going to come out of nowhere and do well. And that's honestly where I think Mew is right now. Next up is Guardy Mewtwo. Probably bad. I mean, we've seen the deck just can't really perform. I think now that like Charizard's a thing, like the Mewtwo just sucks. Next up, we got Reversal Guardy, or just Guardy in general. The Tord list, honestly, Gardevoir, still probably a tier 1 deck. Even honestly, I could see Gardevoir being S tier. I think, honestly, that's a pretty fair place to put Guardy, to be honest. I think Guardy's still an S tier deck. People are really... I know sleeping on Guardy is the word. I think Gardevoir is just still an insane deck right now. I think Tord's list is very inventive, and I think Tord's list actually is just great. I think the Mirage Step Curlia is finally amazing because it's great if you brick. It's great against Lost Zone. Mirage Step Curlia is just a very strong card for Gardevoir. The double reversal energy is also really good right now. The Force Seal Stones are good. Yeah, I think that Tord's Guardy list is pretty perfect. I don't even know if you would even change it going into Pittsburgh. Like, you would argue that Gardevoir has a bad Charizard matchup. I don't even know if it does have a bad Charizard matchup, to be honest, because you can still beat Charizard with, like, Zacian and Reversal Energies, and I think that Gardevoir is still just an insane deck. I think it's still tier S. I think a good Guardy player can still do well. I mean, people were saying that Guardy was falling off for Worlds, and, like, look at it. It nearly won the World Championship. So I was like, yeah, Gardevoir is still a good deck, in my opinion. I would not be surprised if Gardevoir did well in Pittsburgh. And also, I wouldn't be surprised if you yourself played against quite a few Guardies at Pittsburgh, especially going into like day 2. Gengar VMAX. Meme deck, probably bad. Glamora, probably bad. I mean, we just haven't seen Glamora do well yet in online tourneys. The deck has some cool things that it can do, but ultimately, I don't think the deck is going to do that well until somebody maybe figures out a good way to play it. Rapid Strike. I think Rapid Strike's a solid tier 2 deck right now. It's another deck that nobody really plays and nobody really respects, but it's a deck that still kind of sneaks under the radar and does well. It still has good matchups. You know, it's good against Lost Zone, good against Arc decks. Actually, probably good against Charizard because a lot of their Pokemon only have 60 HP. I think the only bad matchups are just like the Mew and maybe like the Giratina matchup might be a little shaky. But overall, I really think that Rapid Strike's actually not that bad of a deck. I think people are really sleeping on Rapid Strike. Or not even sleeping on it, but people just don't really respect it or care for it too much, and that's why the deck kind of is still like very much a tier 2 deck right now. Next up is Colorless Lugia. I think this is also tier 2. I think Colorless Lugia is legit a good deck. I actually played it to a league challenge on Friday and got second place with the deck. I think Colorless Lugia is a legit good deck. It's got a lot of really cool plays it can do with like the Slacking and the Snorlax, the Weird Ear. The deck also plays Path. Colorless Lugia is a legit deck that honestly has a great matchup spread. I think it's only bad matchups. Honestly, maybe Charizard's a little shaky. I think that its matchup against Single Strike Lugia is also a little awkward, but I actually think Colorless Lugia is like an actual deck people are sleeping on right now. It's a sleeper deck. It's like Palkia and Rapid Strike even. I think it's a sleeper deck right now. It's a very heavy sleeper deck. I legit think it's good. I played the League Challenge, got second with it, and I kind of, while playing the deck, I realized this deck's actually not bad. Yeah, I think Colorless Lugia is a great deck. I think people are sleeping on it. Next up is Single Strike Lugia. I think Single Strike Lugia right now is probably tier 1.5 because I think the deck is good in the meta. It still has great matchups. It's basically just Lugia translating over to Obsidian Flames meta. The way people are building the Single Strike Lugia deck for the Obsidian Flames format is that they are playing the new Cobalion, so that if you play against Charizard, you can one-shot the Charizard with Tyranitar for 3 Single Strike energy and a Cobalion on the bench, which is a pretty cool idea. So Lugia is still holding on. Single Strike Lugia is still fantastic. It's got, it still has all the good matchups you would expect. Now, here's the thing with both decks, both Lugia decks, both Colorless and Single Strike Lugia. They actually have a great matchup against Lost Tina. That's one of the things that makes Lugia so good right now, is that it has a great matchup versus Lost Tina. And Lost Tina is arguably the best deck right now. It's also probably the most popular deck in the format right now. It's winning bare League Cups, bare online tourneys. I mean, we saw in the last video I posted in the online tourney results video, one of the tournaments, half of the top 16 was Lost Tina decks. Lost Tina is just everywhere right now. Lugia, both versions of Lugia, have a great matchup against Lost Tina, or at the very least, they're favored against it. And that's one of the selling points about playing Lugia right now, is it's very favored against Lost Tina, or at least it should be favored if you don't have the Lugia draws that Lugia usually gets. But if you don't draw like a Lugia deck, you draw really well, I think it just farms Lost Tina, or should be able to beat. Because Lost Tina is not playing Temple of Sinnoh anymore, right? So I think Lugia is a great deck. Both builds, I think, are fantastic. I think so. Single Strike Lugia maybe edges out Colorless Lugia by a little bit. Next up is the Lost Zone variants. Starting off with the Sky Seal builds. I mean, it's kind of hard to judge it because nobody's really playing Sky Seal right now, but Sky Seal's probably like tier 2.5. Like, I don't know. Sky Seal Stone's a good card. I don't know. I don't know where to rank it. Next up is Lost Goo. Probably tier 3. Goodra's, like, still fine. I mean, the Lost Goo decks are innovating. Like, they're not just straight Lost Goo. A lot of them were playing Zam, and they were playing Sableye. I think Sableye and Lost Goo is actually really good. And it was something that I thought was good all the time. But, yeah, I think that Lost Goo's just tier 3. I can't put it in probably bad. I don't think the deck is, like, dead or anything. I think the deck is still fine. You could still probably play it and do well with it, but yeah, kind of an under-the-radar deck, but I don't think it's under the radar enough for you to actually probably want to play it. Kyogre. So Kyogre is very popular. I'm going to put it in tier 1. I would put Kyogre in tier S, but we'll have to see where it goes. I think Kyogre for now is a tier 1 deck because I think Kyogre is great. It's seen a massive resurge in popularity. It's winning a lot of League Cups. It's winning a lot of, even winning online tourneys. It's seen a lot more played in the online tourney scene. And again, even IRL, the deck is doing well. It's winning League Cups, right? And that's a very big deal. Kyogre, I think, is back in a big way. And I think we're going to see a bit of a resurgence of Kyogre at Pittsburgh. And we'll talk about that more in the Pittsburgh video, obviously. But yeah, I really think that Kyogre is coming back into the format now. And I think that it's actually starting to become a popular deck again and will maybe become a popular deck. So I'm going to put Kyogre in tier 1 for now. Kyogre is just great, and nobody really expects it. When you're playing against a Lost Zone deck, you're not going to expect a Kyogre right now, and I think that's kind of the big reason why it's starting to come back. Lost Tina, I think we can all agree Lost Tina is probably S tier. It's very much the best deck. I think it's better than Gardevoir, or at least more popular than Gardevoir. Maybe not better than Gardevoir, but it's definitely more popular than Gardevoir, and probably is better than Gardevoir, to be honest. But yeah, Lost Tina is a very good deck in the format. Again, it's easily the most played deck right now. Like, it's very popular. It's also just winning a lot. It's winning a lot of online tourneys, winning a lot of league cups. It's just a fantastic deck, and I think that Lost Tina is one of the decks you need to make sure you can beat going into Pittsburgh, and I think that Lost Tina also has a great matchup spread. I think a lot of people agree that Lost Tina beats almost everything if it doesn't brick, or at least if it doesn't draw poorly. Lost Tina it seems like it is the deck that can almost beat anything. Like, there's no deck on this tier list, other than maybe Lugia, that just beats Lost Tina that easily. I think Lost Tina is legit that good of a deck. That it's one of those decks that just doesn't really have a bad matchup. And I think it's going to be very popular in Pittsburgh. And I think Lost Tina is, without doubt, the BDIF right now in our Obsidian Flames format. And again, Lost Tina also has a very good Charizard matchup. Keep that in mind. If you want to play a deck that just beats Charizard, just play Lost Tina. You don't even have to play Shaman V. Just Lost Tina just beats it. If you have Path to Peak, Star Requiem, Sableye, even Lost Impact is really good against Charizard because you can not only one-shot Charizard or Arceus Pidgeot, but you can also just hit Charizard and then Sableye it. Like, the deck's just insane right now. Sableye Cramsard's probably tier 2.5. The deck's actually really fun to play, and I think is legit, like, decent. But it's kind of just, it's like, it feels like a worse Mirage Gate deck, but the Sableye Cramsard deck is still decent nonetheless. It's still good. Charizard can catch people off guard. It's still a really good card against all the two-prizers that are going around right now. And I think it's also good against Lost Tina specifically. Next up is the Miraidon deck. So Miraidon Regielekis, probably tier 3. I don't think the Regieleki is worth playing right now. However, I think that Miraidon Flaffy, or in other words, Miraidon Path, I can't believe I'm saying this, I think Miraidon is actually good right now and actually a tier 1.5 deck. I think it's up there with Xianpao and Arctina as an actual legit deck in the format. Xianpao is obviously blue Miraidon, but Miraidon's actually making a name for itself right now. And because of Mahone's Path to the Peak list, Miraidon's actually catching a lot more play right now. Miraidon Path is legit a good deck, and I think it actually goes really well into the Obsidian Flames format because Miraidon seems to be decent against Lost Tina, and it also seems to be good against Charizard. You have Path against Charizard, and you have Raichu against Charizard, so yeah, I think that Miraidon Path is legit a good deck. I think Miraidon could genuinely be a tier 1.5 deck right now. Like, I don't think it's tier 2. I think that Miraidon, Path, Flaffy, whatever you want to call it, is that good of a deck that I think it's tier 1.5. It's also doing pretty good in online tourneys, and because of what happened at Worlds with Mahone's list, I think that people are realizing Miraidon seems to be good right now, and yeah, Miraidon Path is good. Don't underestimate the power of Path to the Peak, baby. Next up is Control. I mean, probably tier 3. I don't think many people are going to play Control right now. I mean, we did see Sanders' Control deck. It wasn't even Penny Control with, like, Ursaluna. It was, like, Espeon VMAX, Vulpix V-Star Control. But Control in general is classified as Control. Control's okay, right? It's like, it is what it is. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what Control really beats, to be honest. Like, I guess you have to play, like, a Sander box deck. You can't just play, like, Snorlax and expect to beat everything. Reggie's, sadly, is probably bad. We did see Reggie's, like, randomly start doing well again near the end of the last format, but I don't think Reggie's translates well in the new format. I don't know. It doesn't seem like the greatest deck ever, or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's a sleeper deck. Who knows? Tinglu's probably bad. Tinglu probably has a bad matchup against Charizard, too, realizing it. I mean, maybe Tinglu's okay against Lost Zone, but I think Tinglu just loses to Lost Tina, because Tina can just sit there in Abyss Seeking and then just run you over. Toadscruel. So, this is another weird one. I think Toadscruel is fine. I'm going to put in probably bad. I don't know why, but I think the deck legit has legs. The problem is the deck is bugged on TCG Live, so nobody's really able to get value out of it. But I don't know, like, on paper, Toadscruel doesn't seem like the worst deck ever. It can do big damage pretty quickly, and it has a good Charizard matchup, so there you go if you want to beat Charizard. And it also just has that really good ability. Now, obviously, Path to Peak is a problem for this deck. Like, you can just play against Tina with Path, and then they just, who cares about the ability? But I don't know, Toadscruel is one of those decks that could actually become like a tier 3 deck at some point. So keep that in mind. Next up is Turbo Lost Box. I think that's also S tier. I think Turbo Lost Box is probably not better than Kyogre. I guess it is better than Kyogre, but at least I think Turbo Lost Box is more popular and probably slightly better than Kyogre. Though again, I think we could see Kyogre come back up, and at that point, Turbo Lost Box Kyogre will become the same deck at one point. But I think that the Dragonite Turbo Lost Box deck. It's pretty good. I think Lost Box, Gardevoir, and Tina are still the 3 best decks right now. And I also think that Turbo Lost Box, even without playing like a Shaman, still just beats Charizard. So there you go. Another bad match for Charizard. United Wings, probably bad right now. I mean, too much Lost Zone going around. I mean, yeah, it's probably okay into, like, the Guardy decks, and obviously probably might not be even bad against, like, Palkia or Shampoo, and probably Miraidon's fair enough, and Lugia probably is decent, too. The Charizard matchup probably might be tough, depends on what you play in the deck. I guess your advantage is you can one-shot Pidgeot with Watchful. Shampoo, Pidgeot. I mean, Shampoo the Pidgeot, if you're playing it with just Pidgeot, probably Tier 2 because it just feels like it's a bit weaker to Path, but, I mean, Shampoo Pidgeot is kind of underexplored right now, so who knows? It could be a lot better. Maybe it is a Tier 1.5 deck after all, but if you're just playing Shampoo and Pidgeot with nothing else, probably Tier 2. I think Shampoo with Arc is probably a little bit better, but Pidgeot, yeah, it could be good. You can obviously mix the two together, but if you're just playing Pidgeot and Shampoo, there you go. Arc Slacking, so probably Tier 2.5. It's another Arc deck that's been kind of seen a bit of play using like Crushing Hammers and the Bibarel Engine and Judge Path, Hammer, Slacking. And Slacking's a pretty strong card right now against V-Stars. And Arc Slacking's a cool deck, and I want to see it do a bit better. I think it's better than the Arc Umbreon Slacking deck because this deck it just kind of does what it does, right? It has Path, Judge, and Crushing Hammer, which, why not? Next up is Meowscarada. I mean, I'm going to put in Tier 3. I'm going to be kind to Meowscarada. I think there's a lot of hype for Meowscarada in the format, but we'll have to see where it goes. It does feel like it's a worse Rapidash deck, but you know what? I'm going to be generous. I'm going to put Meowscarada in Tier 3. Is it probably bad? Probably, but I'm going to put in Tier 3 for now because I'm a nice person. But yeah, there you go. That is my tier list for the Obsidian Flames meta heading into Pittsburgh. Again, I think Charizard is not that great. I think it has bad matchups. I think Charizard has bad matchups against most of the decks above it. And I think that this is where the meta is right now. Debatably, you could say that Shampoo Pidgeot's Tier 1.5. You could say Colorless Lugia's Tier 1.5. I think Colorless Lugia is just actually that good of a deck, but that's probably for another day. Yeah, I think that this is the tier list for the Obsidian Flames meta. What do you think of my tier list down below? Did I leave out any decks? I don't think I did, per se, but let me know what you think. I'm going to leave a link to the tier list down below if you want to go try the tier list yourself. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Again, help me on the road to reaching 8,000 subs here and all that good stuff. And yeah, let me know what you think. Pittsburgh's coming up, and I think this is what we can expect the meta to look like for Pittsburgh. And who knows, maybe Kyogre will be S tier by then, because I think Kyogre, again, it's seen a huge resurgence in popularity. Anyways, thanks for watching. Have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.